Welcome to the 6 Miles to Supper podcast. I'm your host, Kayla Cox, and I've lost over 80 pounds with intermittent fasting 6 days a week, eating whatever I wanted at my meals, taking a cheat day every Sunday, and walking 6 miles a day. And I'm here to help you on your weight loss journey. In today's episode, we're going to talk about managing your mood when you're intermittent fasting. Now, this, I think, is such an important topic because being in a good mood is paramount in importance when it comes to weight loss success. There's just no way around it. If you're in a bad mood all the time, it's going to be really hard to stick with your plan, especially if you are just in a bad mood all the time. Even if you get down to your goal weight, if you're miserable, you're going to start putting the weight back on because we can't live in misery forever, right? Like eventually we want to be in a good mood. So we will do the things that we think will put us in a good mood. So I would encourage you, if you find that with intermittent fasting, you're in a bad mood all the time, for whatever reason, it just doesn't work for you, pay attention to that. Always listen to yourself. But there are some things, with intermittent fasting that I think there are some, just some things that you're going to experience probably, and just knowing that it's normal, I think will help you. So the first thing I want to discuss is hanger. And the thing about being hangry, if you've never heard that word, it basically just is a combination of anger and hunger. And a lot of us feel kind of angry when we're hungry. And I was one of those people. And I'm still, I would say, one of those people. The thing is, I experienced hanger, back when I was obese, back when I was eating all day long, I still felt hangry from time to time. It really, whenever my eating time got pushed just a little, that's when I would get hangry. Intermittent fasting didn't get rid of that completely. For example, if I'm doing OMAD, let's say, I would say that in general, I don't feel any hanger until probably about 5 o'clock in the afternoon, if I'm going to eat around 6. And I started to see that, that there was a very clear pattern. Okay, about 5 o'clock, my patience is wearing thin, with everyone around me. And so what helped me was just to acknowledge that, just to notice it and say, oh, okay, at about 5 o'clock, I need to be extra patient with everybody, and then to slow down my responses. And so that just means taking that extra half second when, you feel yourself, wanting to snap back at somebody because they asked you a question or they were being annoying, just taking just a little breath and just okay. And then respond. And it's just the simple thing that you can do, but it's so helpful because if you can start to handle that hanger and just say, okay, this is a normal thing and I'm going to eat in just a few minutes anyway, and then everything will be back to normal, I think you'll find that it's a pretty manageable thing. In fact, I would say I have a lot less hunger with practicing intermittent fasting than I did when I was eating several times a day. But, another kind of mood thing can happen. You might just start to feel kind of draggy, just, low energy. And some people feel this for a few different reasons. Some people, I am thoroughly convinced, simply their bodies just don't do well with intermittent fasting. My husband is a prime example of this. He just doesn't feel as good when he's intermittent fasting as he does, if he's eating, 4 or 5 times a day. I'm sure that has something to do with metabolism or something. But the point is, just because, other people like intermittent fasting, it doesn't mean that it's going to work great for you. It might not put you in a great mood. On the other hand, it might be that you're just not eating enough. And, of course, as I've gone through this whole process, there have been times where I've realized oh, I did not eat enough. I especially experienced this when I went to OMAD, just eating 1 meal a day. There were times where it was oh, wow, I just did not eat enough the day before. And then what happens is that next day you're feeling draggy, maybe you got a headache and you're just feeling maybe even nauseous. And that's not good. It puts you in this horrible mood. And the way to fix that is to eat more at your meal. And that can be kind of difficult. When you're trying to lose weight, the temptation is there sometimes to say, well, I can eat just a little less. But the important thing is to stay in the good mood. If you can just stay in that, it's like a sweet spot. You got to find it where you're feeling really good, you're feeling really energetic, which will help you get up and move around more, which will help you burn more calories, but when you're feeling bad and you're feeling, lethargic and stuff, you're just not going to stick with it. So either eat more, or, if you feel like, man, I really am eating enough, it might just be that intermittent fasting just isn't the right fit. Another reason you might be in a bad mood is because you're intermittent fasting. And what I mean by that is because you're doing something different than the people around you. Like if everybody in your office has lunch together and you're not having lunch with them, it can be a thing. It can be a thing that puts you in a bad mood. And I want to encourage you that it's important to find that right plan that will work in your life. So for example, yes, I have found that in general, I prefer OMAD, right? Like one meal a day, it's easy. I don't have to think about it. But as a mom, I've also found that occasionally I don't want to do OMAD. I want to do 2 meals a day. I want to, sit there and have lunch with my kids just because I want to have lunch with my kids. And that is okay. The important thing is to acknowledge whatever it is that's putting you in the bad mood and getting to the root of it. Like if you start to notice that you're just like really mad that you don't get to have lunch today, then tweak your plans so that you allow yourself lunch. But there are always going to be compromises to be made. Like for example, on those days where I don't do OMAD, I do 2 meals a day instead. I need to have smaller portions at those 2 meals, because if I eat an OMAD size portion for both of those, I'm going to be gaining weight. And then here's a tricky thing though. Sometimes you're in a bad mood because of your weight problem, and this is where I was basically, in 2014, 2015, really up until about 2016. A lot of times I was just in a bad mood because, my weight was not where I wanted it to be and I was having a rough time. And just acknowledging that to yourself to say, man, it is rough when you're trying to lose weight and you're having trouble. Because if you learn to say like, okay, I'm in a bad mood right now, you can also say, well, what would get me in a good mood? And for me, what I found was taking really good care of myself helped me to get back into a good mood. Here are some things that helped. One, listening to music. I know that sounds so simple, but just really making a playlist that I loved, the music on it, and just playing that playlist, and it would lift up my mood and it would help me to feel motivated again and to take those steps that I need to take. Also, getting my self-talk in the right spot. I noticed for myself, a lot of times the things I was saying to myself about myself were mean, and they were not helping my mood at all. It was usually putting me in a bad mood. So learning how to stop that kind of negative self-talk and instead change it to something positive and affirming, like saying, okay, I'm overweight right now, but I'm taking these actions so that I am going to lose weight. Also, make sure you're getting enough sleep and enough rest, because nothing can put you in a bad mood like just being tired all the time. Go to bed earlier, get into a morning routine, wake up at the same time every morning. And what really helps me still to this day is if I find myself in a bad mood, just asking myself, what would put me in a good mood right now? Like, what could I do to put myself in a better mood? And if you acknowledge that you can do that, and see, here was the thing. In the past, I used to kind of feel like I was just at the mercy of my emotions, just like, well, I can't help how I feel. A lot of times I would just say that, like, I can't help how I feel. I'm in a bad mood right now. But I changed my thinking on that. And I think the book that really helped me with this was Awaken the Giant Within by Tony Robbins. He points out, basically, you can change your state. That's what he calls it. Like, you can change the mood you're in right now. Like, he says, to do something, like you can yell something out, or like, woohoo, or, I just did that just now. And I smiled, right? Because it changes how you feel. And so there are things you can do to actually make yourself feel differently. And then learning that about myself, that I don't have to stay in that state. If I want to change, I can. The tricky part is sometimes I'll be in a bad mood and I'm kind of a stubborn person and it's like I almost want to stay in that bad mood for a while, and which is so silly. I can think back to some time, a few months ago, we had a travel day. We had been driving for a long way, and for whatever reason, there was just a couple little things that happened, and it put me in a bad mood. And I had learned all this stuff, right? Like, I know that I can just change my mood whenever I want to, and I'm getting my steps in with my husband, and I'm thinking the whole time, like, I know that I can choose to be in a in a better mood right now. And I just didn't want to choose it. And I felt like, man, that is really silly to be choosing to be in a bad mood. And so, we got back in from the walk, and I just decided, like, okay, I'm done being in the bad mood. And I, like, threw a sock at somebody just to make myself laugh. And just like that, I was out of that bad mood. And that kind of taught me a lesson about how silly it is to choose, to be in a bad mood. But that even when you realize, like, okay, I'm being silly right now, you can still change it. You can make the choice at any moment to say, okay, I'm in this, negative spot right now, but I'm going to change it. And you just got to figure out for yourself what could help you change it. It might be a good song. It might just be making a joke, or just, pulling a funny face at somebody, or just doing something to make yourself laugh. But when it comes right down to it, learning how to make getting into a good mood a priority, I think, is one of the best, if maybe not the most important thing you can do on the weight loss journey. Just every day, figure out how you can put yourself in a good mood. You don't want to be miserable. And if you do find any kind of feelings of misery, pay attention to that. Like, those are important parts to learn from, and just say, okay, what is it that's making me miserable right now? Listen to your self-talk, listen to what's going on, and sometimes you can find out from yourself what you're feeling resentful about, and then take action on those things. And I think you'll find that over time, you will be more consistently, at least, in a good mood. So thank you for joining me in this episode, and I'll see you in the next one. Do you want to lose the weight without getting rid of the foods you love, and that you'll go back to eating again anyway? My book, The Laid Back Guide to Intermittent Fasting, teaches you how to practice intermittent fasting so that you lose the weight sustainably and keep it off for good. You can get the audiobook read by me for free when you sign up for your 30-day trial of Audible. The link is in the show notes.